Hi all, I'm Professor Luce, and we're here to talk today about chapters 11, 12, and 13, organization. So organization is really critical for any of the speeches that you're going to be giving today, and it's also helpful to understand why some speeches are easier to resonate with you, and why you may have trouble understanding some speeches, or you lose some interest. So we're going to talk about a couple basic things. The first is how to organize the body, and then second, the differences in the types of outlines that are out there and which one you should be utilizing. So in terms of organizing the body of the speech, you don't need to start with the introduction. Instead, the introduction and conclusion should really come last, because you can't write those until you know what the meat of the speech is going to be, and that's going to be your main ideas. For any speech you give in this class, it'll be 2 to 5 main points, but any speech period should not be more than 7 main ideas. People sometimes get it stuck in their head that they need to have 3 main ideas, and I have no idea where you got that from. It's not true. You can have 2, you could have 3, you could have 4, or you could even have 5 for our class. The reason I say not 6 or 7 is that with the time limits that we have for our speeches, you wouldn't have time to have 7 main ideas. So within those main ideas, you're going to have supporting points. So think of it as, if you have 2 main ideas, you might break those down into subsections. They might have 4 subsections each. They might have 3. They might have 5. That's up to you to determine based on the length of the speech, the type of the speech you're giving, etc. Those ideas need to be coherent with each other. So that means that those supporting details need to all go back to support the main idea. And those main ideas need to remain distinct from each other. The last thing that you want to think about with the organization of those big picture ideas is going to be that you want to have transitions. So there's key words that we often use, things like next, second, finally. Those are all indicator words that tell you, hey, we're wrapping up this one main idea and moving on to the next. The book talks about several different types of organizational patterns. There's a couple that you'll use more frequently than others. For example, chronological is one of those ones that's sort of intuitive. You probably would use this quite a bit. It is in terms of a time sequence. So if you're telling us how to put together something like how to build a treehouse, you would want to organize it chronologically because you have to build things in a certain order. If you're talking about a historical figure, sometimes you might talk about them chronologically as well. So you may talk about their early lives, their middle lives, and toward the end of their lives. A second organizational pattern would be topical, and that's really straightforward. It's by topic. So if you were going to tell us about different types of chocolate, that might be something that you would talk about topically rather than chronologically. Now, there are some speech topics that can be done with either, and you just have to choose which one do you like more or which one is probably better suited. So, for example, you might talk about Oprah Winfrey's life. You could talk about it chronologically. You could also talk about it topically. It just depends on what your main ideas are going to be and what you feel is most important in that speech. Those are the 2 that you're more likely to use with informative speeches. When it comes to persuasion, you're going to be using problem solution or problem cause solution. And it's just like it sounds. You have either 2 or 3 main ideas. If you're using problem solution, one main idea for persuasion is the problem, the other is going to be the solution. If you use problem cause solution, you have 3 main ideas: the problem, the cause, and the solution. We'll get into a little bit more depth with those when it comes to persuasion, but it is important to recognize what sort of organizational formats are out there. When it comes to the any old bag speech, you can either organize by topic or chronologically. You don't have to go past, present, future, although that's perfectly acceptable. And then with your bag, that might fit in the middle. So maybe your bag also represents your present. So your first object might be your past, then your bag, then your other item that represents the present, and then your future item. But you don't have to go in that kind of order. You just have to figure out what makes the most sense for you. When it comes to outlining, the book talks about 2 different forms here. One is called the working outline or the preparation outline, and one is called the speaking outline. There's a big difference between the 2. The most obvious difference is going to be that the preparation or working outline contains the entire speech as you intend to say it. The speaking outline is keywords only. The job of the speaking outline is what you put on your note cards, so it jogs your memory about what you want to say based on that original preparation or working outline. What you submit to me via Dropbox will be your preparation or working outline. It's word for word what you intend to say in the speech. That is key. It has to be the entire speech, word for word. As in, if you printed it out and handed it to a friend, they could just read off that document and it would be a speech. If you have written down red fire truck, Pops candy, soda, that's not a speech. If they don't know the context behind it, they cannot give a speech. The reason you give me that preparation or working outline is that it allows me to look and see into your mind and see what you were trying to do versus what actually happened in the speech. And sometimes they're really, really close, and that's good. Sometimes they're very far apart, and that's where issues come up. And I can go back and look and say, all right, you had a really good speech written, you just didn't say some of these things, and that's what led to some of the miscommunication in your speech. So those are the two types. The speaking outline is keyword. That's what goes on your note cards, is meant to jog your memory. So you start by writing out the preparation or working outline and writing it out fully. Once that's done, then you start practicing from that, and because you practice and practice and practice and practice, you'll get to know the content, so you don't need the full sheet anymore. Then you just need the keywords to remind you. That's it for chapters 11 through 13.